a film, no more. I'm floating around 10 feet on the ground. I'm floating around 10 feet on the ground.
Hey guys, hello to all my regulars, including Troy Hensley, Charlotte J, Craig Roach, researcher extraordinaire, ASPA 60, John Ayers. Who else we got here? I also appreciate any new viewers that might be tuning in for the first time. This is a Bigfoot show probably like you've never experienced if you're tuning in for the first time. As usual, please put your questions in caps. I think I got the putting your questions up figured out finally. Hey, Sharon. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Hit the likes, share, talk up the show for me if you don't mind. I'm really looking forward to this show. I'm going off script again today. When I say off script, what I mean is most of the episodes in my show are based on my book, Psychological Horizons in Scientific Bigfoot Research, available on Amazon still until the reprint shows up from Hangar One Publications, and it will be called Grasping Sasquatch. It'll be a little different from my previous book, and it'll have I think they're called CRO codes, where you can go to the references and experience some of the sights and sounds that are referenced in my book. But I'm really excited about today's show because this is something that I gave very little treatment to in my book. And so this is has been a learning experience for me. Hola, Carolina Puerta. Carolina Puerta was a research assistant of mine down in Mexico when I was down there teaching for just under a year. And she was my primary research assistant for my dissertation many years ago. And without her, I would have not been able to finish my dissertation. She's an awesome individual. Hello, Eric. How are you, sir? Nice to see you. So as I was saying, this is a lot of this is new information for me because honestly, I've always kind of frowned on tree structures, and I'm still honestly pretty skeptical, but remain open about glyphs. Glyphs being the sticks laid on the ground, supposedly to communicate certain things, many of which I'm not aware of. But we're not going to get into glyphs today, but we are going to get into a lot of the tree structures. As I don't have much experience with tree structures, I'm taking a story that actually I saw online on Facebook, and it was just a very fascinating tree structure segment. In this segment, they were working with a remote viewer. And for those of you who may not be aware of what remote viewing is, it's the ability to kind of, if you will, leave one's body or project one's body and perceive other things going on in the world. in different locations from where the remote viewer themselves is. And in this episode that I watched, the remote viewer had a map of the mountain area that they were investigating. And the goal was to find a concentrated area of tree structures. And so she looked onto the map and went into a little meditative state, and on the map located an area where there was a concentration of tree structures. And then they followed the map to that location. And when they came upon that location, what they found was incredible, just incredible. It was, I'm totally guessing the square footage of the area, but it was a relatively clear spot in the forest. And again, I didn't count the number of tree structures, but I've never seen so many tree structures either in person or on anyone else's video or presentations on tree structures. There was just everything you could imagine there. Teepees, balancing trees. I think there was even one that's not included in tonight's show, but it was kind of looked like a big dream catcher with vines woven into a circle. And it was just an amazing display of tree structures that, of course, are attributed to Bigfoot. And I wish I had a reference to send you to that page, but in fact, I don't. And I really wish I did. I also want to give a quick plug out to Craig Roach, Squatch 1222. He's just started up a Facebook channel, and he is, at least in the episode that I was able to watch, dealing with some really fundamental questions about Bigfoot, things that a lot of us take for granted, but things that also need to be scientifically investigated and quantified. And I really encourage you to check out his new show. And ASPA 60, she has just an awesome show on the Untold radio network called Down South Anomalies. She lives in Sydney, Australia, and her show, it's not per se a Bigfoot show. I'm not sure how to characterize it. It really defies characterization in that she and her husband deal with so many different topics. I watched the one on music and dance, and it wasn't related at all to Bigfoot, and many of her episodes are not. But nonetheless, just a very, very, very fascinating show. And I would encourage you to check that out. Okay. On to the presentation tonight. As I said, it is about tree structures and experimental design. As you guys are aware of, I'm trying to bring psychological science to the process of searching for Bigfoot. And you've seen a lot of treatments, no doubt, over the years of tree structures. I'm starting with a very classic teepee structure. Of course, one of the biggest issues with tree structures is many of them, not all of them, but many of them could be constructed by human hands. And so one of the big debates and one of the criticisms of tree structures is that it's hard to tell whether it's due to Bigfoot intervention or human intervention. And this is part of why I'm using tree structures. And in particular, I'm going to focus on teepee structures because they can be relatively easily replicated by human beings, as this one here you see could possibly. And I want to, towards the late middle of the show, we'll actually get into the experimental design. And it's my hope that you'll better understand through that part of the discussion what psychology and psychological experimentation can bring to the table for us to be able to identify Bigfoot activity and separate it out from human activity. I hope we get to it tonight at the end. If we don't, it'll certainly be the next show. I guess I should also shout out happy holidays to everyone. Merry Christmas, happy Kwanzaa, any other non-Christian faith, however you celebrate this time of the season. I wish you a happy holiday season. So, for your consideration, the eyes only see what the mind is prepared to comprehend. Of course, you've heard many stories of many hunters who have been hunting for thousands of years, 40, 50, 60 years, and they've never seen Bigfoot. They've never seen signs of Bigfoot. And I think on one level, this quote applies to those folks. If you're not prepared and you don't know what to look for, you're not going to see these structures. You're not going to appreciate some of the phenomena, the Bigfoot phenomena that you may hear in the forest. And if you're not aware of Bigfoot or looking for Bigfoot, you're likely to attribute it to something else. And the second the other thing that this statement applies to, it relates to my bias of psychological science. And it's my hope that through this presentation, I'm going to be preparing your mind to comprehend so that your eyes can see how psychological science and experimentation could be a great resource in the hunt for Bigfoot. And then Neil deGrasse. One of the biggest problems with the world today is that we have large groups of people who will accept whatever they hear on the grapevine just because it suits their worldview, not because it is actually true or because they have evidence to support it. The really striking thing is that it would not take much effort to establish the validity of most of these cases, but people prefer reassurance to research. I have mentioned that I've kind of pulled away from the internet since starting this show, and I restrain myself from commenting on whether it's Bigfoot made or man-made, because basically we're using logic and reasoning to attribute it to Bigfoot, and so it becomes a logical debate, which really doesn't resolve anything, because although tree structures can be awesome evidence of Bigfoot, it's still often difficult to rule out a human influence. So this is one of the new things that I ran across when I was doing the research for this show, the Knox-Gigas study, Knox-Gigas structures, and I'm probably mispronouncing this gentleman's name. He has a book out where he not only covers tree structures, but a wide variety of Bigfoot related phenomena, hair braiding on horses, different types of philosophies of Bigfoot, just quite a comprehensive book that I came across doing this research. So these things that I'm about to read to you here, or you may be reading already, are in his words. He says, the research that I've conducted on BFRO, Bigfoot Field Research Organization's expeditions, and with Native American researchers of Bigfoot have given me insight into the structures and their unique characteristics. I have corroborated evidence in that these structures exist in Sasquatch habitat, from mountain regions of the Rockies to the water webs of the Missouri and Mississippi. He didn't come completely east, apparently, and if you've been out in the east, be it northern or southern regions, you will also see these tree structures. One of the more common tree structures that I have witnessed myself are arches. Sapling trees pulled over into an arch and held down by another tree, branch, or rock. Sometimes there are several trees arched over that, and I refer to that as a double tree arch. These arches may be directional markers or indicate ground burrows or cave and karst systems. I don't know what a karst system is in the area used by Sasquatch. There are hypothetical beliefs as we do not know their intended meanings. And I think I'm glad to see that he made that comment. You know, we're kind of second guessing the meaning of them. Some of them seem very logical and send a loud message when you see them. Others aren't so quite clear. X structures are either suspended as floating X's with the ground support branches holding two branches in an X fashion. They may also stand against trees with supports on the ground around them to maintain an X configuration. Even whole trees have been documented pulled into an X symbol. These structures may be a meeting place, as X marks the spot. Barry Webster of the Omaha Reservation research observed a large male walk over and squat down below a tree structure, an X. Quite a few of the X structures, and again, I am no expert in tree structures. I'm not an expert in Bigfoot, but how I've seen and interpreted the X tree structure is when you're walking down a path and directly across or over the path, you see an X structure. And to me, that's kind of a keep out sign. Don't go here in my interpretation, but that's just one man's interpretation. John Ayers, a good example I use. I have lived, hunted, and in the woods a lot. There are bears all over. I have only seen one in my 55 years. They're there. Just got to be in the right place at the right time. And I appreciate that comment. I would add that while some of the tree structures that you may find on the ground could be the influence of bears pushing down trees, when you see some of this other stuff that I'm about to show you when we get through the different types, it'll be pretty obvious that these possibly can't be made by bears. Thank you, John. Awesome comment. And where are they? Come on, there you go. Stick structures are configured usually at the base of a tree. Many small sticks are grouped together as if gathered there for a purpose. I believe the juveniles of the clan make these as they are sentinels for the group during day hours. And again, keeping in mind that this is Mr. Knox speaking. Teepee structures, already showed you a picture of that. Pretty self-evident. They look like a teepee, an Indian teepee. I've seen them in ravines, several tree sized logs holding each other at the top in this manner. They come in all sizes, large and small. Blind shelters are usually built on a fallen log or a tree and have many placed or woven sticks and branches on a log to make a shelter or blind. Asterisk structures, wait till you see the example I have of this, are multiple branches grouped together, balanced, standing, or on the ground laid out in an asterisk shape. Balanced logs, and again, got an excellent example of this, or tree branches woven between trees. They sit even to the ground, but are suspended between trees or laid on stumps. Lean-to trees are positioned so that they are suspended by another tree. They do not fall this way. That do not fall this way. They are brought from another location and positioned in this manner. If there's a stump broken off right at the tree, then it probably fell this way. Sasquatch will push trees over to intimidate others, though I've witnessed this many times. Sasquatch will walk on trees and logs that are scattered about. Make note of how they look on the ground or if they were carried there. Do not push trees. They do not push trees into a creek or a river to gain access to drink water. That's interesting. That's an interesting idea, and I think probably has some validity. They will also place a tree over a fence to cross the fence. Neat. Tree breaks are broken trees twisted at the break that are not caused by wind damage. They may be directional markers pointing the way. You can discern these types of breaks by looking around the area and taking note of any other trees that might be broken by wind gusts. Single tree breaks are common as you follow them through the woods. If there are multiple tree breaks in the same area pointing in the same direction, it's probably not related to Sasquatch. It takes a picture to recognize. This is one of the things that I've always wondered about with tree breaks, people saying they point in a direction. One, I'm not sure how we know that. But secondly, what direction is it pointing? Is the tip and where the tree is broken from its main structure and then lands on the ground, is the direction of that top break pointing the direction, or is it the direction the tree is laid on to the ground? ASPA 60, the structures do appear to be worldwide, many documented in Australia. We have photographed some. Awesome. Thank you. And then one I've never heard of before, but probably have seen, superstructures. I've termed large whole tree structures typically created by the alpha male. They may have a combination of structures like arches and woven elements connecting several trees together. I've photographed these structures with 4 or more whole trees that required many pictures to take in their totality. And again, he doesn't mention glyphs in this list of tree structures. He also doesn't mention what I earlier just described that looked kind of like a dream catcher, a woven circle of vines. And the one that I saw was suspended between 2 trees, and it was beautiful, beautifully wrought. Troy. What about tree breaks with a twist at the broken area? My friend, be patient and you will be sated in the next few minutes, my friend. John Ayers. I always ask, could I do this? If there are any objects bigger than I can alone, I pay more attention to those. And I think that's a very important point, and one of the criteria that you need to look at to rule out human influence. Is it possible that a single human or a group of humans could construct what you're seeing? And if they could, you need to be very cautious about attributing it to Bigfoot, in my opinion, unless, of course, you're doing some experiments on that structure. So here we have one. Somebody give me a thumbs up if you can see this adequately. If you can't, I can go to full screen to make it bigger. But if you see it, just give me a thumbs up or say, yeah, we can see it. But kind of in the middle of the screen, about halfway up the length of the tree, you can see what looks like either a root system or a branch system suspended in the air. Any better? Any better? So to me, one of the important things to notice is the height that this massive branch or root system is suspended upon. you'd have to be walking around in the woods with a ladder, I think, to do that. So, um, in my opinion, at least for what it's worth, that's pretty incredible. Here we've got the famous Dr. John, I'm blocking on his name, Bendernagel. Thank you, brain. And so this is kind of an interesting structure that he's standing on and standing under, in that it's an arch, but it also has the broken branch and the almost the beginnings of a teepee appearance. This is one that just blew me away when I saw it. The picture on the right. I guess this would qualify as an asterisk. But look at the size of those logs forming that asterisk and the trees that are bent over. Look at the height, how high that is in the tree. Diane Fowler, nature can do that. Are you? I agree if you're referring to the one that Dr. Bendernagel is standing under. I'm not sure how humans could do the one on the right, the asterisks, without some heavy equipment and evidence of heavy equipment getting in there, or evidence of a lot of people having to use ropes and other things to hoist that up. But you also make a very important point, which is that's one of the primary rule outs you've got to consider. And I think, again, the one with Dr. Bendernagel under, I think, is an excellent example of that. Could that have been from weather? Could that have been man-made? How was that formed? And, especially with snow load on some of these thinner trees, they will bend those trees quite easily if they get heavy snow. And then when the snow melts, often the trees don't bounce back, or high winds can knock down trees. And so you've always got to look around your surroundings to make sure that you've ruled out Mother Nature, in my opinion. This is Dr. Bendernagel again with multiple small trees formed into an arch. So what does that mean? Is that an entryway to a path to travel forward under? That's one thing that comes to mind to me. I'm not sure what comes to mind to the rest of you. I would have a hard time taking a direction from that kind of arch beyond just moving forward under it. And if you don't know Dr. Bendernagel's name, you need to look it up and get familiar with him. He's one of the oldies but goodies and has been doing Bigfoot fieldwork research for quite a long time. Diane Fowler. I think we got to go back, and I don't mind going back. The picture on the right has been made by manipulated with intelligence and opposing fingers. Sasquatch for sure. Again, not knowing much about Sasquatch or tree structures, it's hard for me to attribute that to any other creature in the forest besides Sasquatch. And again, if this were to be man-made, it would take a lot of people and a lot of equipment to make that. Intelligence, that's another show. I think intelligence, from my bias, fits right in there with my comments in an earlier show about curiosity. I think we got to be careful about anthropomorphizing Bigfoot and attributing human qualities to Bigfoot, like intelligence or curiosity. It could be that they have a natural instinct for this, to do these things, that's hardwired into their brain, that might not have anything to do with intelligence, but also may have something to do with intelligence. Again, we're making an attribution about that one way or another. No, that's not intelligence, or yeah, that shows intelligence. We're making an attribution about that without ever really being able to study the structure and how it was made, and observe a creature making that. And that's not a criticism, Diane, of your comment. I just think we need to be careful about anthropomorphizing Bigfoot skills. A lot of what we attribute to intelligence could very well be a super instinctual ability in the forest. Again, another asterisk, probably approaching a superstructure, in my opinion. Big logs, big parts of trees. You can see lots of aspen trees, or I don't know if those are aspen or birch trees in the background. But some of those aren't aspen or birch trees. They've been taken from elsewhere and integrated in from a different area, or at least an area not immediately besides that. Oops, sorry. Not ready for me yet. This is from a Paradise Hill. They call it a barricade. The top photo shows two cross logs arranged as a possible barricade. The lower photo is enhanced to show the direction of the trail, since it has not been used for some time. Now, earlier I referred to X structures being used to block a path. This kind of resembles that, but the ones that I've seen have been kind of vertical, right over a well-worn path, and to me just screamed, don't go there. Paradise Hill nesting site. The left photo is a southern elevation, right photo is an eastern elevation. This possible nesting structure is within 200 yards of a teepee structure. Photo credit to Sasquatch Tracker 2019. Again, I don't know. I'm just kind of free associating. Doesn't look like a very comfortable nesting spot to me. That doesn't mean it's not. I'm sure Sasquatch Tracker knows a lot more than I do. But John Ayers is kind of making my point as well. I've seen pictures of Bigfoot nests suspended up in trees as well as down the ground. I guess so. This could be nesting structures, but this could also be either barricades or a blind, as far as I'm concerned. But again, we all have our own opinions, and that's why we need science. And here you go, Troy. Notice the number of twists in this tree. Notice the thickness of this tree. This is not something a human, if you've ever tried to twist even a thinner tree and break the bark in this fashion, making twists, this is not something that could easily be done by humans. Notice as well that it's twisted and broken over some barbed wire. I think that is an awesome picture of a tree twist and a tree break. What are you saying? Like, don't go through. Troy says, like, don't go through there. Yeah, that would be one good way to interpret it. The sheer strength and force required to twist a tree like that, frankly, to me, is pretty intimidated. Let's see, credit a twisted deciduous sapling. I guess it's a sapling. It looks pretty thick for a sapling. Found in a valley farm on a farm known for Sasquatch activity in Ohio. Photo credit John Bindernagel and Barcroft. Awesome. Awesome. Okay. Now for the boring stuff. It's now for the exciting, the really exciting stuff. This is exciting to me. It may not be to others. Why should we use psychological science to study Sasquatch? Why do we need psychological science? We seem to be doing fine on our own. We're doing fine on our own in identifying Sasquatch sign, but we're not doing fine on our own in getting science to accept that evidence. So a phenomenon, what is a phenomenon? Or phenomenon? A fact or situation that is observed to exist or happen, especially one whose causes or explanations is in question. A remarkable person, thing, or event. That's from the Oxford Language Dictionary. And when you get right down to it, that's what we're studying when we go out into the woods. We're looking at phenomena. A phenomenon is single, phenomena plural. Why psychological science is important is phenomena and phenomenon is what psychological science studies. We can't directly observe, measure, and analyze emotions, thoughts, or behaviors. Well, we can observe behaviors. We can't see emotions. We can't see thoughts. We can, however, observe and measure and analyze the phenomena and behavioral manifestations of thoughts, emotions, as well as other behaviors. Similarly, Sasquatch is difficult to directly observe and analyze. And now I'm not calling into question Class A sightings. They do happen. I have no doubt that they happen. But more frequently, what you're going to experience when you go out in the woods on an expedition or with some friends is you're going to observe Bigfoot phenomena. We can directly observe and logically reason / analyze Sasquatch phenomena and their behavioral manifestations. That's what we're doing with tree structures, especially the ones that are physically impossible for humans to do. We're attributing that to Bigfoot, and we're using observation and logical reasoning and analysis. Psychological science simply brings the scientific method and experimental research and statistics to this process. So, and you've heard me say before that the experiential expeditions also need the scientific expeditions, and the scientific expeditions need the experiential expeditions. The experiential expeditions are pouring the foundation for the house of Bigfoot that scientific expeditions need to begin to construct. And so we need each other, because without each other, the science wouldn't know where to shine the light and try and focus their experiments and their studies. And as we've seen from the 60 plus year history of people really getting intent on studying Sasquatch. That history goes a lot further back than that with the Native Americans and such, but maybe those of European descent, I would say. That's been going on for a good 65 years, and we've got all kinds of evidence, yet it's not scientifically accepted, and Bigfoot's existence is not scientifically accepted. And this is why I believe we need psychologic science, because psychologic science uses the scientific method, and we bring numbers to the table. The language of science is math and numbers. And I believe until we start speaking that same language to the scientific community, we're going to continue to tread water in attempting to prove the existence of Bigfoot. Only 741. So we use a lot of reasoning. Reasoning is the process of using existing knowledge to draw conclusions, make predictions, or construct explanations. So in doing so, we use inductive and deductive reasoning. I was a big Sherlock Holmes fan as a kid, and of course, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle in those books always talked about Sherlock using deductive reasoning. In fact, it's more accurate to say that Sherlock Holmes used inductive reasoning. Deductive reasoning is that, in other words, inductive reasoning moves from a specific observation to broad generalizations. So Sherlock would show up on the scene of the crime, and observe all these things that other people missed, and then put all those disparate observations, small chunks, together to figure out the criminal. Deductive reasoning works the other way around. Both approaches are used in various types of research, and it's not uncommon to combine them in your work. This diagram makes it a little bit easier to understand. On the top, we've got inductive reasoning, specific observations. And then we look for that to be replicated, or we look for a pattern in that, and then we draw a general conclusion. Inductive reasoning has been the foundation for Sasquatch research for a lot of years, and I think that's probably why we're having trouble moving forward from that, because it's prone to bias, and bias runs rampant because we put our own patterns of recognition on it, and we draw our own general conclusions. Below, deductive reasoning, and I'll contrast this with the scientific method in a second. Note that it begins with an existing theory. I got a problem with that. I'm not sure how accurate that is, but according to Scribber, you got to develop an existing theory, you formulate a hypothesis. It should be the other way around. In my opinion, you should use your observations to formulate a hypothesis, then collect data, analyze the data, and either reject or accept the hypothesis. If you accept the hypothesis, when you repeat that over and over again, you then develop a theory. So I don't like this particular model in that they've got the theory on the front end. And as far as I'm concerned, the theory should be part of the outcome on the back end, as is displayed in this next picture. The scientific method. It starts with observations, and those observations then guide us to form a question. That question becomes a hypothesis. A hypothesis is an educated guess that we want to figure out. Testable, falsifiable. predict future observations from a hypothesis when it's an accurate hypothesis. It's their specific, parsimonious, fruitful, conservative, and have a wide scope. Conservative, you don't want to take too great of a leap in their hypothesis. Please share your support. Okay. So you got your observations, you form a question, you form your hypothesis, and then you begin to test out your hypothesis. You test out with experiments, and there's my bias. I think we need to bring more experiments to it, but not a lot of people have the training and knowledge to do that. It's not that tough, but again, if you haven't been exposed to it in your mind, you're not going to be able to see how to do it. But it can also include natural quasi-experiments. Testing tends to be objective and document. If you're not documenting specifics of your observations, you are doing yourself a disservice. Then we move over to results. The results should be unambiguous design. If you get your results you're looking for, you then move on to conclusions. But if your conclusions aren't borne out, note the dotted line goes all the way back to starting with a new hypothesis. This is not something we're doing in Bigfoot fieldwork. We develop our theory back to inductive reasoning. We get an observation. We have some pattern recognition, and then we develop our theory. And then confirmation bias kicks in, and anytime we see that pattern, we automatically attribute it to Bigfoot as a general conclusion, which may or may not be an accurate conclusion. And from that conclusion, we develop, it reinforces our theory. I'm going the wrong way. Sorry, guys. So, experimental research. Here's my bias. And boy, we're running out of time. It's a scientific method of gathering data whereby the one conducting the research is able to manipulate the independent variable. Experimental research psychology is the act of applying experimental research methods to the study of human, or in our case, Sasquatch behavior. So again, you can see the scientific model in this experimental research approach. You define your objectives and your variables. That then leads to planning and designing your experiment or your research process. That then leads to an experimentation procedure that you then analyze. You interpret those results and develop your conclusions, which leads to defining new objective and variables. And this is all existing around a system under study. And here's my attempt at creativity. So, with regard to structures, for me, the big rule out besides Mother Nature is, could humans be contributing to or making these tree structures? So what we're studying in the middle there is Bigfoot tree structures. That's our question. Can we parse out, or can we isolate the influence of humans versus Bigfoot? So in this example, I'm going to just lay out a very, very simple experimental design. Let's say you go up into the woods and you find a series of teepee structures. You'll measure out with a tape measure the area that these structures exist within, and take some measurements on the structure itself. Obviously, for experimental purposes, you're probably going to want to start with a small teepee structure. So you find the target Bigfoot tree structures. You can count how many there are in that defined area. And in this example, I actually take it one step further. you can then replicate those tree structures in a defined human area. And this is how we sort out human influence versus Bigfoot influence. We're going to find, and oftentimes these structures exist in a relatively remote area, not easily seen from, although you can see them from the paved roads. But so you want to identify an area in the woods where these structures exist, where the only possible influence could be Bigfoot. It's not likely, or it's highly unlikely, that you're going to have an human influence. Then you map out or you measure out an area where it's unlikely to have big fluence in it, and only the human influence. Now, here I'm talking about replicating those teepee structures in the human area, but you could also just keep the human area blank. You could leave it wide open. You then allow time to pass and recount the number of teepee structures in the Bigfoot area, and count the number of teepee structures that show up in the human area. Human area being the influence of humans, the Bigfoot area measuring Bigfootness. You don't have to see the Bigfoot building them if you've picked an area that is isolated. So you keep a count over time. And then you statistically analyze the difference between the number of structures in the Bigfoot area that pop up or that are added to it if you set up one to begin with, and compare the Bigfoot and the human areas to each other. And it's not just enough to count, the Bigfoot ends up having 10 teepee structures, and the human area only has 2, the one you initially set up, and then somebody came along and added one just for fun. You've got to do a statistical analysis to find if that's a significant difference between the Bigfoot area and the human area. It's not enough just to just count them and say, oh, well, there's a lot more in the Bigfoot area than there is in the human area, therefore, Bigfoot wins. That's a qualitative observation, but you need to move to a quantitative result through your experimentation. Is there a statistically significant difference between the two areas? Which one had the greatest increase? The area where you're measuring Bigfoot phenomena, if it's Bigfoot, it should have significantly more teepee structures, if you will, than either the wide open area that didn't have any teepee structures, or where you just constructed one. And then you ask yourself, is it safe to attribute structure building to Bigfoot? Is this making sense, guys? I hope so. So that actually, I talked about 2 designs. Quickly, I've got a couple other designs, or a few other designs, some of which I don't like that I have in the list, because I do believe in respecting Bigfoot structures and areas. Some groups of Bigfoot thinkers believe they could have spiritual value. Some structures are associated with burial grounds. Okay. But we've talked about the number of structures in a designated Bigfoot area versus an empty or with one teepee structure in the area. The number of structures in a designated Bigfoot area versus the mimic structured in the human area. That's where you set up your little teepee in that area, how many square foot it is, and then keep track of how many other pop up. Here comes the ones that I don't like having on my list, but they kind of make sense to me. You could go into an area where there are multiple teepee structures destroy one of those TP structures, come back in a week or 2 weeks or a month and see if it's rebuilt. The problem with that design is, one, all the designs after this, you're destroying Bigfoot structures. But the bigger problem with that is there's no control group. You got to have a control group, which would be the human area. If you're going to parse out, is this the Bigfoot influence or is this human influence? Because if you don't have that human control, it could be researchers coming into that area and reconstructing the teepee. So you need numbers from both the human and the Bigfoot area to control for the influence of humans in the Bigfoot area. Second study, destroy and rebuilt within a Bigfoot area versus destroyed, rebuilt in human structures in a Bigfoot area. So you go into a Bigfoot area, and maybe you don't even have to destroy a Bigfoot TP structure. Just erect a human TP structure, making sure you leave your scent on it. I would recommend against urinating on your TP structure, but if you're handling the wood with bare hands, you're going to leave your scent there. And I think Bigfoot's scent or ability to smell is probably much superior to ours. And it would be interesting to see if the Bigfoots destroy the ones with the human scent on it and leave the ones intact. Again, here we're dealing with both a Bigfoot area and a human area, whether you destroy one in a human area or just build them in a human area. By comparing the pure human area, the pure human phenomena, to the pure Bigfoot phenomena, you're able to parse out or isolate the Bigfoot phenomena from the human phenomena by running that statistical analysis and comparing those two. And then the last variation can either destroy and see if it's rebuilt structures in the designated Bigfoot area and do the same in the human area. It's my hope that you understand that by using an area that the only phenomena that could possibly be there are human related, and when you compare that to a Bigfoot area where the only phenomena possible there are a Bigfoot phenomena, that in comparing those two areas, you can isolate the Bigfootness of that area versus the humanity of that area. I'm hoping that makes sense because I am out of time. I had hoped to spend time doing other ideas or questions, and I guess I will ask you folks between now and my next show. I'm open. This is probably one of my weakest areas. I'm open to any other ideas or experimental designs. It's my hope that through this presentation, you can get a better appreciation for how bringing experimentation and statistics to the Bigfoot search, we can actually begin to isolate Bigfoot from humanity statistically and walk down that path of proving Bigfoot exists. As always, thank you very much for your kind attention, listening to my own biases. I hope I've stimulated some thinking here. I'm going to wish you guys a happy holiday, and I'm going to ask you to keep your mind open your boots on the ground, and your heart with your higher power. Be safe. God bless you.
I see you running out of reason. Don't try to blame it on the season. Why you wanna walk away? When we began, swear we had something that would last. Baby, has the feeling passed? Falling in was easy. How do I make it stay? I'll never let go of you. Tried and true. Oh, I'll never let go of you. Tried and true. Was I a fool? I know sometimes I may wonder, but I would never leave asunder a thing as good as what we have. Is it a rule? What's good is worth the fighting. There ain't no denying that you and I were made to last. Falling in is easy. How can we make it stay? I'll never let go of you. Tried and true. I'll never let go of you. Tried and true. I'll never let go of you. Tried and true. I'll never let go of you. Tried and Have you had a change of heart? Can we go back to the start? I'll never let go of you. Tried and true. I'll never let go of you. Tried and true. Tried and true.
Wanna do it all with you by my side. If you're in, meet me here tonight. Be brave and come along. I'll be your right. Promise we